But we're talking about the Bible, of course. We're talking about Revelation, but we're talking about some various different beliefs and teachings out there. And it's important to know some of this stuff when you're looking at Revelation so that you know what you're up against. If you ask somebody how to drive a semi-truck and they start you off with the kitchen, and you go and you get a frying pan and you put it on the stove and you turn the stove on high, your face would be exactly like that. You don't know what you're talking about, driving a semi-truck, and you started me off in the kitchen. So you just be aware of some of these things as we talk, and we'll go from there. So if you want to go ahead and turn to Revelation chapter 20, just in case we get into that, you can. We'll give you a minute for that. That's what I'm putting up on the screen. It's the two different pre-millennials, and then the post and the amillennial. And it's just basically a graphic to explain visually for any of our visual learners. You see
the pre-tribulation, pre-millennial, yeah. Post-tribulation, pre-millennial.
Yeah, that's the folks that think that we're at the end. So these two believe very close, except they just believe where the rapture is.
Yeah,
and then you got the other two that are just this poor fellow down here. I don't know, whatever. Anyways, all right.
Wow.
So
okay.
With that, I guess we'll turn it over to you and let you.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about I wrote three of these down. And I guess we'll talk about the millennial, and then we'll talk about the tribulation. So the first one is, now the millennial reign is 1,000 years. So chapter 20 is about that 1,000 years. So there's a lot of teachings out there that been around for a while. In fact, to be honest with you, some of this stuff I was not aware of until Pastor James said, "Okay, I want you to look about this and talk about it a little bit." And I thought, okay, I don't know what this is, so I got to study and found out. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit about it. Post-millennialism. Did I say that right? Post-millennialism. Anybody can say that better than me? Say it.
Post-millennialism.
Post-millennialism. There you go. There you go.
It would be the yellow one there, Chip. If you can zoom in on the yellow one, that would be great. Yep. If you grab the screen, like hold it with the mouse, click it and hold it, and then drag up and down. Yeah, there you go.
Then we have pre-millennialism.
So you're going to start with post?
I don't know.
I thought you were starting with post.
I am. I hope I got it listed correctly. All right. We got it listed correctly. All right. Stick here. All right. We got this one here I'm going to talk about. Then Pastor will help. This movement started about 1850s, and they believed that the 1,000-year millennial reign had already started, and that Jesus Christ would return on earth that was saved and fully serving God, and that from 1850 until the next 1,000 years, the people on earth would steadily turn to God and get saved, be healed, and prosper, and the world would be a great place to live. And of course, we'll talk about how that turned out. So about 1850, this belief started. Now, there's still some people that believe this today that we're living in the millennial reign. We're living in the 1,000 years millennial reign. And so they believe, and now you think about this, because generally people consider what's going on in this world by what's going on their circumstances. So in about 1850, I guess, living in the United States, people were getting saved, and there was great revivals going on. If you study the history of the United States, there was great revivals going on, and there was a lot of good things happening on this earth. And so people started this, the tribulation period. There's the ones that believe the tribulation period had taken place and we was in the millennial reign. Then there's the ones that believe that the millennial reign was going on, and then there was a tribulation period, and we'll try to get to that. But they said, we're living in the millennial reign. Now, remember, you're talking about a time, a utopia time, or a time of peace and harmony, just living in paradise. And I don't know whether you call people living in 1850 in paradise or not, but not everybody in the world was living in paradise.
That's true.
You know, let's say, so people were saying this about their circumstance. So we'll go from 1850 and we'll just go 100 years instead of 1,000 years. So when we talk about our history from 1850 to 1950, tell me some of the world events that's happened. World War I, who said that?
Oh, that's real good.
Thank you. That's a great one.
Before that, Civil War, right?
Civil War, you know, you think we're going to have a world war during the millennial reign? During this time? Pearl Harbor, yes, Pearl Harbor.
41,
yeah, so there you go. So you look at it, world wars, all kinds of diseases. Of course, we're living in a pandemic now, but it's not been 100 years. But we had the pandemic in the 1814, 1810, wherever, not 1914, something like that. So, of course, it didn't work out. And, of course, these people that was alive in 1850 are not alive now. So, they didn't see all the things that we saw. So, now remember, when we get into the millennial reign, the diseases and sicknesses is going to be gone. The blights on the crops and stuff is going to be gone. The death that would cause by disease, abortions, all those things are going to be. Why are those things not going to happen? What's the main reason those things are not going to happen during the millennial reign? Now think hard about this. What do you think the main reason there's not going to be any sickness or disease, not going to be any sin or temptation or anything like that during the millennial reign?
Jesus got something to do with it?
Yeah, of course, Jesus, yes. Jesus. But I'm on the opposite side. What he said?
He said, "What's the answer you want?"
Yeah.
I'm on the opposite side of Jesus.
We're getting to that.
Little fellow.
I'm on the opposite side of Jesus.
Little fellow with the tail sits on your shoulder.
Oh, that's not so nice. Yeah.
Yeah, what about that guy?
Okay. All right.
Where is he going to be during the millennial reign? Where is Satan going to be during the millennial reign? He's going to be locked up for 1,000 years.
Okay.
See, so there can be a millennial reign, and I'll get to that a little bit later. There can be a millennial reign if the devil's still out there turned loose, causing people to sin, tempting people, sickness, disease, blights, causing people to fight. See, there can be. So something's got to happen to Satan. Now, just you guys here, you think Satan's been locked up 1,000 years? No. I can tell you right now, he's in my life. I can tell you, Satan's tempted me. You know, all right. So we're going to go with millennialism.
All
right, go ahead. Fire away. Yeah.
So some of the things about this post-millennialist view is they hold that Christ will only return after the kingdom is come in its fullness. The arrival of the kingdom is thus gradual and brought about by a slow yet steady advancement of the gospel until eventually all the world's population will be converted to Christ.
Everybody.
Wow.
Yep.
So you think about this millennial reign. Let's just take America. Slavery ended in America in 1860. Yeah, we say 64, 66. Depends on if you're talking about when it ended and when it actually ended. That, the fight that happened and we were in war. So we say 1850 is when this started. I don't think the slaves would agree that we was in the millennial reign.
No.
At 1850.
Yeah. That's right.
16 years before, or 15 years, whatever you want to call it, before slavery ended. And to think that the gospel will continue until everybody in the whole wide world will get saved, Satan would have to definitely be gone for everybody to get saved. And yet, the world as we see it is waxing worse and worse and worse. So there's some of that. And I just wanted to throw some names out there. Advocates of this view, or people that gave this view: John Calvin, William Perkins, Jonathan Edwards, George Whitefield, Samuel Hopkins, E.W., this fella, Kenneth Gentry, and Douglas Wilson. So when you talk about some of the old school ministers of the gospel, and people want to ask you, oh, did you like this person or that person? Just know their gospel might have been sound, but then when we get to the book of Revelation, it might be a little off. Is that okay? It's all right with me if the gospel is sound, but their views of the tribulation or the stuff is a little off. They're dead and gone. It's okay. Take the good about their ministry. Understand the good of their ministry. It's what I like to say. We're all human, and we're going to make mistakes. And especially in the old time, as Dad was saying, these people thought things were so good, we must be getting into the millennial reign. Well, okay, sure, it was good for you. So you couldn't see how some of the stuff was going to happen. I mean, before 1948, Israel wasn't a nation again. So we had people preaching the book of Revelation saying, how could this be? I don't know how it's going to happen. Israel's not even a nation, but somehow Israel's going to come and be a nation, and people are going to attack Israel. So they tried to fit what the best knowledge they had, and then, of course, they died before other things happened, and so they're stuck believing post-millennialism. Okay, I'm not going to hold that against them. They preached the gospel. They got the word out there. They were a parts of great movements. Fine. But some people are going to say, oh, no, you believe that mess? I'm just done with you, and I'm not reading anything that you ever put out there. So I'm just throwing some things out there at you guys. Be careful with that. Take the good that you can from some of these folks, and let's move on. Okay? So anyways, that's post-millennialism. It's odd.
But we'll add to that. I mean, during this time, some of the greatest revivals in American history happened.
Yeah.
Some of the greatest revivals in England happened. So if you read about these revivals that went on for months and months and months, they happened during this period of time. We had great revivals. So there was, great ministers, great preachers, and there was great happenings that happened, and wish we had great revivals like that today, but
right.
We don't have. And again, just to show you how it's very difficult to teach prophecy, we know, we'll just go with today. A couple years ago, if you was preaching about the countries that was going to invade Israel, one of those countries that was going to invade Israel was Afghanistan. And people would say, well, how is Afghanistan going to invade Israel? What, are they going to come down there with shovels and rakes and try to take over Israel? Israel's got all kinds of weaponry. Afghanistan would get blown out of the water. That doesn't make any sense. You've got to have that wrong. But what do we know about Afghanistan today? Afghanistan's got $87 billion worth of equipment to attack Israel or anybody else who want to attack. Well, that just happened in our lifetime. Immediately, see. Yeah, boom. Right now, they've got 87, they got helicopters and tanks and weapons of all kinds of military weapons.
They went from being not a threat to being a big threat.
That's right.
For Israel.
For Israel. I'm not saying that Afghanistan is going to attack Israel tomorrow or nothing like that, but I'm saying it would be very difficult to look at prophecy in 1850 and figure out how all this was going to happen when Israel wasn't even a nation. It would be very difficult. The best prophetic guy I knew was Roy Botard, and Roy Botard would tell me he knew it was going to happen, but he couldn't understand how it was going to happen. See? It would be very difficult to understand how it was going to happen. But as you see, we're living in these times, and man, it's a great time to be alive and be a Christian, because you can see how prophecy can be fulfilled just by what happened in Afghanistan. The pastor, he was the one that brought this up and brought it up to me. They now have $87 million of military equipment, $87 billion of military equipment with which they can use to attack Israel. See, I mean, that didn't happen. That would have been there 5 years ago. 5 years ago, someone could give you a great big argument about that's not going to happen. But now that argument's been wiped away. See.
So all right, let's just make sure you understand this picture. Post-millennialism is in yellow. It has the cross, which is when the church age began. Eventually, we just kind of get into the 1,000-year reign, which, according to this, started around 1850, which means the second coming of Christ wouldn't come until 1,000 years later, which would be around 2850. Today is 2021, so we got 800 years and some change left to live.
Wow.
Is there anything just off of that in of itself that might raise some red flags? Like, I don't know, no man knows the day or the hour of my coming?
Yeah.
Well, if it was 1850 and it's 1,000 years, let's just mark it right on down, boys. 2850 is when Jesus is going to return. We can tell you exactly. Just throwing that out there.
Very, very good.
Moving on.
All right, where's this other guy's called? Millennialism.
Millennialism.
Thank you very much.
It's in the green. If you could get down to green, Chip, I'd appreciate it.
All right, these guys believe that there'll be no 1,000-year millennium on the earth. They believe that there may be a possibility. Some believe that there's 1,000 years millennium in heaven, which doesn't make sense. But most likely the 1,000-year millennium is also, and also the whole book of Revelations is symbolic. They don't believe any of Revelations, just as symbolic, and they believe that the 1,000-year millennial is just symbolic. Now, I was surprised at the number of people that preach that today. Now, Pastor gave you a bunch of names of people that were great ministers in their day back in 1850, and they've long since died. But there's people that teach that today. In fact, I talked to a pastor about that who said, a preacher, I won't call him a pastor, who said he didn't believe in the 1,000-year millennium. He didn't believe that was so. And I said, well, how do you account for that's in the Bible? Where do you account for that? Not wanting to get in an argument, I just kept my mouth shut. I asked him a couple of questions, and then, I just don't believe it. So I was surprised at the number of people that don't believe Revelations. What are you going to pick and choose? I'm just going to say, what are you going to pick and choose what's symbolic and what isn't symbolic?
That's right.
And as we have taught in this class, when the Bible uses symbolism, it explains what that symbol means, doesn't it? Every time there's symbolism in the Bible, don't you just read a little further, read behind it, read a little further, and it tells you what the kings are. It tells you what the sword is. Just read the Bible, and it'll explain itself if you keep reading it long enough. Now, why do you think God would take so much time in putting the Bible together when part of it's just a myth? He wouldn't. Why? Why would he do that?
If we are living in the millennial reign now,
yes,
then everything else is done.
Oh yeah. If you're getting the first bunch, yeah.
Yeah. If this is the millennial reign, then we're in. We're done. There's not. The beast has been thrown out. The false prophet's been thrown out. Satan has been thrown out, and we're living in a perfect world, and we're all good. Good.
And we're far from that.
And if there is no millennial reign and all of Revelation is symbolic, well, just where are we living at then? What period of time are we in? What are we looking forward to? If there's nothing in Revelations that's going to happen, it's just symbolic and just a good story, then what dispensation are we in? There's no 7 churches. Where are we at?
Yeah.
I
don't know.
Well, that really puts you in a spot.
Yeah,
You don't know where you're at.
You're using that word that we're in. You're using that dispensation as.
Sorry.
I'm just saying that's good. I don't know if you realized that was there.
No, I didn't know that was there.
I didn't think you did.
Look at that.
Anyhow, they throw something out there. It says Satan's influence over the world seems great right now. Because he's bound up. If we're in the millennial reign, Satan is bound up. It says Satan's influence over the world seems great right now, but he is bound and limited in his ability to deceive the nations. But that binding will come to an end at some time in the future. So right now they believe Satan is bound up, and eventually that's going to come to an end. So he's limited in his power, but he still has an influence over the world.
I want to tell you what, if Satan is bound right now and his power is limited, what's he going to be like on this earth? My sakes alive, how bad can it get? Again, that doesn't follow the teachings of the Bible.
If I could just, I know we're not in 20 yet. We haven't got to it yet. We're throwing some stuff out, so when we read 20, you can see some of this stuff ahead of time. But it literally says that he's bound with the chain. That he's bound with the chain, and they put a seal on him. He's shut up, and they seal it for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So anything else that we could think of that was something was sealed up in a tomb that was supposed to be there and was guarded so that nothing could escape. It was called Jesus. They rolled a stone in front of him and they put a seal on it that no man should roll that stone away. And if they did, there was under penalty of death. They had the Roman officers out there guarding it. Of course, the angel came and wrecked the plans of man. But when anything is sealed up, is closed, and put a seal, that's it. It's not open. Your influence is limited. You are stuck in that prison.
No influence.
To say that influence is limited here is hilarious. If Satan is chained and bound, he's done. He's not here.
And it says could not. The Bible says could not deceive the nations anymore.
Yeah.
Could not. Not that he partially had some kind of influence or no. He had no influence. He was not in the state. All right.
Yeah.
So we'll get to this pre-millennialism. It is a belief that Jesus will physically return to the earth.
Where you at? Where you at?
This one here.
All right, hold on. Green. Make sure we understand green.
Sorry.
The cross was the beginning of the church age.
Yeah.
And somewhere we jumped into the millennial reign. I don't know when we started it, but Christ comes at the end, second coming, and the last judgment comes at the end of the millennial reign. And it's, again, Dad said it, as he said here, it was figurative, it's symbolic. The way they say it is hilarious to me. They say we don't believe it's symbolic, but there's a bunch of symbolism. It's, I don't know, I was trying to find it, but I can't find it. In any event, is he coming or ain't he? Is it symbolic or isn't he? Is Satan bound up or isn't he? Is it a literal 1,000 years or isn't it? Like, if we start taking all of the stuff that is said in chapter 20 as symbolic, then you don't know nothing. You have absolutely no information whatsoever. Yeah. And what's the point of God giving you his word to give you information if you don't even know what's real and what's not? We don't know if it's 1,000 years. We don't know. Well, he's bound up, but he still has influence. Well, it's 1,000 years, but it's not really 1,000 years. Well, the Lord's coming, but he's coming sometime then. Anyhow, it is a hot mess, but that's what this is. We're living in there now. And if we're also, real quick, if we're living in there now, then Revelation chapter 4, verse 1 has already happened, which means the rapture of the church is done. Yeah. Do you see a rapture of the church in the green anywhere? No, there's no rapture of the church whatsoever. So that means there is no rapture in this belief. There's nothing in this belief. We're just here until Christ decides that we're, I don't know. And when we die, we go, and that's where this millennial reign is in heaven. When we die, we rule and reign in heaven with Christ for this 1,000 years. And it's a continual rapture, if you will. The saints, after they die, they go to heaven. That's what they're trying to call a rapture. So it's a mess. I don't know what we're ruling and reigning over in heaven, because we sure ain't reigning over God. You know what I mean? So, and the angels don't need to be ruled and reigned.
And if you talk to some of these guys, they'll you got to be careful because they'll change their mind on you. They'll say, well, the millennial reign started when Christ was crucified or when Christ was resurrected, or well, that means it's been going on for 2,000 years. Well, that don't make sense. You know, right. So you got to be careful. And anyway, I guess I try not to argue with them because you can't. If their viewpoint changes, you can't. Very difficult to argue with somebody when his view. Well. No, this is what the Bible says. Yes, but this is what the Bible means. No, it just means what it says. But you know.
Yeah.
All right. So,
which one of these are you about to do?
This one here.
They're both premillennialism.
Yeah.
Yeah. One is dispensational, which means we believe what the Bible says and it says what it means.
That's the one we're doing.
And one is post-tribulation.
Oh my!
The second, you see that?
But if you? Yeah. Okay. We'll do this one here.
All right.
Because the tribulation's got to come when it comes. Okay. If you believe it like this, this premillennialism is the belief that. So it's this pink one, I guess. Yeah. Is the belief that Jesus will physically return to earth or the second coming before the millennial, a literal 1,000-year golden age of peace. That also believe that chapter 20 of Revelations and all of Revelations is just the way it is written. Jesus Christ will physically return to the earth with his bride, that's us, the church, and this will occur prior to the millennial reign, prior to the 1,000 years. If you're a premillennial person, you're also probably a pre-tribulational person. There can be no millennial, golden age of peace if Satan is free to do his bidding. How can there be peace and tranquility when Satan is not bound in chains. I've got down here. So this last group here, and then, well, there's two last groups. So it's very difficult to believe the Bible the way it's written and then change it, but that's what some people do. So we believe the tribulation period started after the rapture of the church took place. Then there were 7 years of tribulation. After the 7 years of tribulation, the armies gathered together in the Battle of Armageddon to defeat Israel. We came back with Christ as his bride. We fought with Christ against Satan and his armies. Satan and his armies was defeated. Everybody was killed, or those that were killed. The vultures came and ate, and the wild beast ate, and it took 7 months for Israel to bury the bodies. And Satan was thrown into the bottomless pit. And we'll talk about that bottomless pit there a second. If the bottomless pit is bottomless pit, then that means he's never hits bottom, right?
That's about how that works.
He's continually falling, and he'll be continually falling for 1,000 years. Get inside that pit. I mean, put that in your brain. Can't imagine what torture and turmoil that is. That ain't hell yet, folks. That's the bottomless pit. Anyway, we'll get back. So continually, he's in the bottomless pit. He's continually falling for 1,000 years, and those that are in there. And then after the 1,000 years is up, then Satan is loose for a small season, and then there's the great white throne judgment. We'll talk about that, and then there will be a new heaven and new earth. Us that their names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life will go into the new heaven and new earth, and those that are not will be thrown into the lake of fire to burn forever and ever and ever. Okay. That's the way we believe it. So we believe that there's a rapture, a tribulation, and then there's the millennial reign. Well, now there's some that don't believe it that way. So some believe there's a rapture, and then there's tribulation. Then in the middle of tribulation, after 3.5 years, there's a rapture. Some people believe that there's a tribulation, and after 7 years, then there's the rapture. I guess we'd go to heaven, turn right around, and come right back. I mean, I don't know that. So it'd be very difficult to believe the millennial reign last 1,000 years, the post or pre-millennial reign, and not believe pre-tribulational. I got these words. I know I'm going to confuse people, but the Bible's not confused about this.
That's very true.
If you read the Bible, it's got listed chapter 1. The reason chapter 1 is chapter 1 is because that comes first.
Right.
The reason chapter 20 is chapter 20 is because that comes after chapter 19. I mean, so, yeah, sometimes he goes back, and John goes back and tells us a story. We do that, we go back, but it all happens in this order. And that's the way we believe it. Of course, that's the way we teach it. And so it's not confusing to me. But when you get to these people and start talking to them, as they mix things up in Revelations, chapter 5 happened after chapter 20 happened. Why would that be? So it does get confusing. See, so if you see some of this stuff, don't read it or don't listen to it, or if you do listen to it, try to listen to it with an open mind, because it is very confusing. But it's not very confusing if you just follow the Word of God. It's the church is raptured out. Revelation chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. The church is out of here. And then after the church is out of here, we don't talk about the church again until way over at the end of chapter 19.
So we come back.
Yeah, until we come back, see? So
it makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense. We're in heaven, and we're no longer the church when we come back. We're the bride of Christ. So the Bible tells us that. So just believe the way the Bible tells it. Yeah, so that's the way we believe it. The rapture, 7 years of tribulation, we return, Battle of Armageddon. After that, 1,000-year millennial. After the 1,000-year millennial, the great white throne judgment. After that, a new heaven and new earth. I mean, it's not hard. It's wonderful to think about. But it's not hard to believe, But for some people, it's very difficult. What are we going to do? What's going to happen? I'm afraid. No, the Bible says it's better than you can ask or think. It's better than you can imagine. It's better than you can put into words. That's how much better it is, you know. Am I going to know you? Are you going to know me? Well, of course we're going to know each other.
Yes.
Of course we are. You know. All right. So you got something, yeah.
So if you look at the pink one here, this is the one that we teach here at this church. The pink one. We have the church age beginning with the cross. The church age runs until the rapture of the church. It says second coming for church rapture. Okay, we don't call that the second coming. We call that the rapture of the church. Anyhow, then you have the tribulation. Then you have the second coming of Christ with the church. We call that the second coming.
Yeah, I know.
Anyhow, then there's the millennial reign, and of course the great white throne judgment, the last judgment. So that's very simple. That's how we believe it. That's how the Bible tells it. God has not appointed us to wrath. It makes sense. His wrath is during the tribulation. The tribulation is the time of Jacob's trouble. That's the Israelites. Jacob, his name was changed to Israel. Hello. Anyways, we're not Israelites or Jews. We're the church. So anyhow, it makes perfect sense when you put all the Bible into context.
That's right. All the Bible.
Yeah. If you'll give me the blue and Chip, these are the views that are they're very close to each other, the pink and the blue. The difference is the blue believes, if you notice there's no rapture of the church right there before the tribulation. They have us coming out of here in the second coming, and the way they describe it is we go up to escort Christ down. Others would call that a bungee jump, but just reverse bungee jump. We bungee up and come back. Instead of bungeeing off the bridge and coming up, we bungee up to come back down. Anyways, I don't know, as if Christ needs an escort. It's funny though, if you read Revelation 19, we are, if you say we're escorting Christ, but he's leading the charge. Yeah. So if we got to go up and get in his way, and then get reorganized and put him in front, and then come back, I mean, it just doesn't make. It just, when you think about it logically, there's no logical explanation in that regard. So the one up here in blue, some people again put us going right there in the middle of the word tribulation. That's the one Dad was talking about, the mid-trib.
Yeah.
So anyhow, the blue, advocates for the blue, John Gill, I have his commentary. Charles Spurgeon, I read his quotes. John Piper, we're getting into some name calling of people around today. Albert Mohler, Francis Schaeffer, Carl Henry, Harold Lindsell, I can't say that name very well. D.A. Carson, Brian Chappell, and Gordon Clark. Some folks that agree with us on the pink, that are advocates for that, are Schofield. This is his Bible. This is the Schofield Bible. Louis Sherry Schaeffer's 8-volume Systemic Theology. Anyways, we're going to skip that one. Wayne Grudem, Erwin Lutzer, Charles Feinberg, John Walbord, Charles Rye, and J. Dwight Pentecost. Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth is a big book that was written in 1970 that people like to read, that I hear referenced all the time. And of course the Left Behind series by Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins. So if anybody's watched any of the Left Behind series, yes, that's the pink one. So in any event, as I tell you this, as you see, I have people's commentary in the blue. I have people's reference Bible in the pink, and I have read quite a few folks' stuff. We mentioned a Calvin. We mentioned a couple of people, early folks of the other two. I have read their stuff, and again, if you're able to separate and say, okay, when we're talking about prophetic stuff, which is about a third of the Bible, really, if you put it all together, about a third of the Bible is prophecy. So you say, okay, if they're talking a third of the Bible, if they're talking prophetic stuff, I gotta set that aside because they're going to teach me something that is not correct. But the other 2/3 of the Bible, they can be spot on about, or pretty close. So if you're able to make the separation, great. don't be too concerned. Just know if you're going into prophecy and you're listening to something that I don't know, Charles Spurgeon said, just kind of let that ride. But if you can separate it, fine. If you can't, then don't read it and move on to somebody else who you can. But I hope we didn't confuse anybody tonight. These are views that are out there that you got to pay attention to. I got one more thing. Anything else you want to throw out there? Because I got one thing I want to read to.
Yes, I do. Many churches don't even touch tribulations.
No.
I talked to one pastor. I wanted to teach tribulations. He said,
Revelation.
I teach tribulations and revelations. And he said, aren't we out of here in chapter 4? And I said, well, yes, sir. He said, then why do we care? That was his view. He wasn't going to teach it. He wasn't going to get involved in it. Mm-hmm. Didn't want to talk. We're out here in chapter 4. I'm not going to read it. And I said, well, we come back in 19. No. Seriously, a lot of pastors and churches just will not touch Revelations, will not touch the tribulation period, will not talk about the millennial reign, because they're confused about it, and they don't want to get in an argument with people, and they don't want people to write in, but if you just take your time, as we have, it's been 2 years?
We're almost at 2 years.
If you just take your time and slowly go through it, because it takes 2 years to teach Revelations. I mean, it does. It's not a simple task.
And that is with a knowledge of the rest of the Word of God.
You have to
Let's just throw that out there. You can't start in Revelation as a new Christian or as a new reader of the Bible. You really need to read it several times and understand quite a bit of it. About all of it. Anyways, go ahead.
But that's what I say. So Revelation is a long. I've enjoyed this thing thoroughly.
A lot of fun.
But Revelations is a long teaching, because you want to make sure you don't lose people. You want to make sure people stick with you and understand it. Those that get it on video, those videos, if someone will take those videos and start watching them from video 1 up until, they'll understand tribulations. They'll understand Revelations. They'll understand the rapture. They'll understand the millennial reign. They'll understand the great white throne judgment.
Can I get an amen back there from the little one? There you go.
She's got it?
She's been watching them.
Thank you, honey. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Catching
You're the one. I knew there was. But that's what I say. But for people that teach it in 30 minutes, or for the people that teach it in a week, you just can't get it in a week, because it can be. There's too many questions to be answered. There's too many questions to be asked. So we have taken the time to slowly go through this word for word, verse by verse, chapter by chapter.
That's right.
To get to this point to where you say, I got that. I can get that, see? And so many people don't want to teach it, because you're in for a long haul. If your church decides to teach it wherever you've been before, it's going to take a couple of years to get things taught. And people just don't want to get into a 2-year teaching. That's a long way, when you're talking about planning and stuff. But it's going to take a couple of years to teach Revelations, guys.
Yeah.
So there we are, and so I know that there's guys that go to college. When they go to college and they take Revelations in college, it's a whole year. You got Revelation, all right? It's a whole year, but you can get through Bible college and not have to take Revelations.
You can,
because it's a whole year. I don't understand that, but I know it's true. All right.
You can read a lot of commentaries, and they'll have 65 books of the Bible, but they won't touch Revelation. They don't have 66. They just got. Anyways, they got 65 out of the 66 books with commentary, and they don't touch Revelation.
Won't touch Revelation.
So throw this out there. It says, most popular teachers. Listen, this is a quote, not by me. This is by a person that I pay attention to, that is a teacher of prophecy, and she's a great lady. I'll leave it to that.
Okay.
It says, many popular teachers and leaders mislead on issues relating to Israel and eschatology. Some of these include Dr. John Piper, Lynn Heibel, Hank Hengraff, Russell Moore, Rick Warren, Rick Wiles, Jim Wallace, Tony Campolo, Shane Claiborne, Brian McLaren, and most postmodern and emergent teachers. Men like Andy Stanley tell people to unhitch from the Old Testament. That's a quote. How's that for de-emphasizing Israel's role? Most of the word of faith / prophecy teachers and almost all the New Apostolic Reformation promote kingdom now dominionism, which does not teach Israel's rightful role in the future. Again, these theologies place more emphasis on the church. So there's a lot of that, which those were names if you don't understand the New Apostolic Reformation or Kingdom Now or Dominion Theology, or Word of Faith and Prosperity Gospels. Those are teachings out there that are big right now and have been big for a while. But a lot of those, there's a replacement theology in that somehow the church takes Israel's place. That the church is now, anytime you see in the New Testament about Israel or Jews or a promise or a condition or something that has to happen or a wrath or anything, it's talking about the church. That's not true. It also there's a couple different salvations, one for the church and one for Israel. That's not true. Salvation is through Jesus Christ alone. Yeah. There's also one that says that God is going to come back and we're going to rule and reign here on this earth, and so we're really looking for us to take dominion and power and authority over the earth right now, as the Lord gave us in Genesis, where he said, I give you power and authority over the animals and the fowls of the air, and you'll have dominion over it all. Rule it and subdue it. And we're looking for that right now. I'm a subduer. And I say, well, go over there and catch the wolf by its tail and see how that goes. Go catch a snake by the tail and see how long that lasts. You want to speak to that thing all you want, but don't test the Lord. The Bible tells us not to. So anyhow, yes, we're eventually going to get to that, where we will be ruling and reigning, but we're going to be ruling and reigning in new bodies. We're going to be ruling and reigning after we've been raptured out of here, after we've been changed in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye. So there is a difference. I'm not going to be reigning and ruling in this flesh. I'm not going to have the temptation of sin. I'm not going to have the physical ailments that I have in the millennial reign. And there is not going to be Satan tempting us. That's a huge deal. You understand? And we're going to get into that in chapter 20. So I'm throwing all these things out there at you to let you know there are some major people that they're just off. They get off at the beginning of Revelation, and by the time they get to chapter 20, they're way out there somewhere. So this is what we got to look forward to. This is what we got coming ahead, the millennial reign. And it's very important that we put ourselves and Israel in the proper place when we get to chapter 20, to realize who we're talking about, who's ruling and reigning, and who we're ruling and reigning over, and who's left on this earth, and the great white throne judgment, and what that's all about. And all that is in chapter 20. So I hope you're not confused tonight. I hope you understand what this was all about. If not, there's a video after we go through chapter 20. Maybe come back and rewatch it. Yeah. Maybe it'll help you understand it even better. So anything else? No? All right. Good job. It's a lot of big words tonight, man. A lot of big words. Oh, all right.
Share, subscribe, and like.